Orang lama, beliau adalah Rashidi Ishak.
Ada yang berjaya teka.
Confused sebenarnya.
Ada yang tembak saja.
Aku nak teka, aku tak tahu nama.
Jad Ali.
Ya, Yusof baliklah.
I am so in love with you.
Teruskan meneka siapa di sebalik topeng. The Mas Singer Malaysia, siaran langsung di Astro Warna dan Astro Go.
Acara sukan terbesar bermula di Malaysia. Saksikan pemain terunggul dunia menunjukkan kuasa.
Look at the animation. Terrific.
Dengan setiap lipasan, setiap smash.
Marvelous skill.
Serlahkan semangat anda demi sukan. Semarakkan harapan jago-jago negara. Saksikan semuanya di kejohanan Petronas Terbuka Malaysia 2024 secara langsung di Astro Supersport, Astro Arena dan Astro Go.
Asia tumpuan utama dunia. Dengan ekonomi yang semakin rancak, pembangunan lestari dan tenaga boleh diperbaharui, apakah pula impak kecerdasan buatan AI dalam perkembangan teknologi dan masa depan pekerjaan? Kami mendalami setiap berita dan cerita. Saksikan diskusi, dialog dan laporan khas di Agenda Awani Asia bersama koresponden khas kami setiap Sabtu 9 malam di semua platform Astro Awani.
Saya yakin dengan jawapan saya.
Saya rasa awak orang lama, beliau adalah Rashidi Ishak.
Ada yang berjaya teka.
Confused sebenarnya.
Ada yang tembak saja.
Aku nak teka, aku tak tahu nama.
Jad Ali.
Ya, Yusof baliklah.
I am so in love with you.
Teruskan meneka siapa di sebalik topeng. The Mas Singer Malaysia, siaran langsung di Astro Warna dan Astro Go.
Perkembangan situasi semasa.
Wujud kenaikan harga ayam
memang berlaku di tempat-tempat tertentu.
Kementerian Sumber Manusia akan menjalankan operasi di seluruh negara.
Kita mahu menghindari unsur-unsur buruh paksa di negara kita.
Berkenaan aspek kawasannya di TikTok Shop.
Rumuskan dan kita kumpulkan apa tindakan pihak kerajaan.
Sudah tahu salah namun tetap berdegil.
Kamu boleh tengok semua channel Astro. Astro First pun ada.
Hanya di Awani 745.
Assalamualaikum dan selamat sejahtera. Anda bersama saya Nabilah Khaleeda dalam Niaga AWANI. Seperti biasa pada jam ini kita akan berikan laporan berita bisnes, kewangan dan juga ekonomi. Jadi kita mulakan dengan perkembangan ini. Property Hub Sedia Berhad cabang kediaman Knight Frank di Malaysia mengumumkan pelantikan Inoch Hu sebagai pengarah urusan mereka yang baru berkuat kuasa Januari 2024. Menurut satu kenyataan, perubahan ini datang sebagai sebahagian daripada komitmen syarikat untuk memajukan matlamat strategiknya dan memupuk pertumbuhan. Pelantikan Inoch Hu, seorang profesional yang memiliki pengalaman dan pengetahuan luas dengan rekod prestasi yang terbukti, dilihat mampu membawa perubahan dalam tampuk kepimpinan Property Hub. Beliau yang berasal dari Malaysia Timur dikatakan mampu membawa banyak pengalaman dan perspektif baharu kepada kumpulan hartanah ini menerusi pemahamannya yang mendalam tentang landskap hartanah. Ia juga ditambah dengan semangat inovasi meletakkan beliau sebagai pemimpin yang ideal untuk membimbing Property Hub melalui fasa pembangunan seterusnya. Antara lain, Property Hub sasar untuk mengukuhkan kedudukannya dalam pasaran, menarik pelabur baharu dan mengukuhkan lagi komitmennya dalam menyampaikan penyelesaian hartanah luar biasa. Dalam peralihan ini, pengarah urusan semasa Benjamin T akan memegang jawatan sebagai naib pengerusi. Baik, masih lagi dalam sektor hartanah, Hong Leong Investment Bank mengekalkan penarafan neutral terhadap sektor hartanah memandangkan ia menjangkakan pertumbuhan sektor sederhana pada 2024 selepas peningkatan yang dinikmati pada 2023 berkurangan. Jelasnya ini berdasarkan kadar pengambilan yang kembali normal dan pertumbuhan sederhana pelancaran dan jualan baharu pada tahun ini. Sekali di Niaga AWANI Forecast, kita nak lihat kepada jangkaan prestasi hartanah Malaysia untuk tahun 2024. Kita bersama tetamu yang bersedia di talian adalah Presiden Malaysian Institute of Estate Agents MIEA, Tan Kian Aun. Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi.
Alright, Kian, pertama sekali bagaimana kita nak tahu trend atau prestasi yang boleh kita rangkumkan untuk tahun lepas 2023 terhadap sektor hartanah? Silakan.
Selamat pagi, terima kasih. Pada pendapat saya, prestasi tahun lepas memang memuaskanlah. Sebab kita nampak banyak transaksi yang berlaku tahun lepas juga. Dan kita tidak dapat mengatakan yang jangkaan kita seperti yang kita jangkakan, tidak ada apa-apa yang mengejutkan lah. So dari prestasi tahun lepas kita nampak banyak juga demand dan juga banyak juga kawasan-kawasan yang berprestasi pun agak stable. Kita tidak nampak harga melonjak ataupun menjunam dengan tiba-tiba lah. So dari segi itu kita amat berpuas hati lah yang dia akan stable menerusi semua sektor-sektor.
Kian, kalau kita nak mengambil kata-kata HLIB, mereka berkata sektor hartanah menyelah sebagai sektor kedua berprestasi terbaik di Bursa Malaysia pada 2023 apabila indeks hartanah KL mencatatkan pulangan merangsangkan sebanyak 34.5% berbanding kerugian FBM KLCI pada 2.7%. Jadi bagaimanakah sentimen pelabur dan juga persepsi pasaran memainkan peranan dalam membentuk prestasi sektor hartanah tersebut?
Untuk tahun 2024, kami menjangkakan prestasi hartanah itu akan terus stabil jugalah, sebab kita pun nampak banyak inisiatif daripada kerajaan ni untuk menggalakkan industri hartanah ni untuk terus berkembang. Daripada banyak-banyak yang inisiatif yang kita nampak, banyak projek dari segi projek di seluruh Malaysia, dari segi industri, dari segi sektor pengangkutan seperti lebuh raya, banyak lagi zon-zon industri yang akan berlaku di seluruh Malaysia. Kita nampak perkembangan daripada segi demand untuk pekerjaan, untuk perumahan di seluruh Malaysia ni akan terus menjadi ada minat jugalah. Daripada segi itu, dari segi kewangan pun kerajaan pun sejak 2 tahun selepas ni pun ada menggalakkan daripada segi rakyat-rakyat untuk memilih rumah, di mana duty stamp bagi rumah di bawah 500,000 dan juga di bawah 1 juta pun ada dari segi rebate juga. Ini pun sebanyak menggalakkan rakyat lah mencari inisiatif untuk memilih rumah. So kita pun nampak ada ramai yang kalangan muda-muda pun mencari kesempatan untuk memilih rumah. So dari sektor daripada segi inisiatif yang kerajaan kita buat, kita pun nampak ada galakan jugalah. Tapi yang kita nampak ni macam dia dilaporkan daripada sektor perumahan baru, projek-projek, kita pun nampak daripada segi projek pun ada launching dia pun dah kurang. So kita pun expect daripada segi pasaran secondary market, kita pun nampak ada perkembangan juga. Daripada segi penyewaan pun kita pun nampak ada perkembangan juga. Ya.
Seperti yang Kian sebutkan tadi, kita dapat lihat perkembangan dari segi permintaan demand, especially dalam sektor sekunder ataupun sektor kedua lah. Jadi kita nak lihat juga bagaimana untuk kita dapat mempertimbangkan arah aliran jangka panjang dalam sektor hartanah dan bagaimana juga untuk kita menilai pertumbuhan sederhana untuk 2024 dan juga untuk kita lihat adakah trend ini akan menjadi sebahagian daripada aliran atau trend yang lebih luas, atau ini adalah kesan daripada merujuk kepada prestasi sejarah dan apa yang perlu nilai?
Kita nampak daripada segi sekunder ni, dia permintaan dia naik sebab lokasi dia. Daripada kita nampak banyak projek-projek rumah-rumah baru yang dilancarkan sejak kebelakangan ni, daripada banyak projek ni dia di luar kawasan bandar. Kalau projek-projek ni di kawasan bandar, di mana peluang pekerjaan, pengangkutan, transport facility semua ada, memang permintaan dia adalah. So kalau dari segi secondary, dia kalau lokasi dia di tempat yang kita panggil matang, yang di mana facility dia ada, kemudahan dia semua ada, dia memang permintaan ada. So daripada segi harga pun, kalau harga dia tinggi, sebab kita tahu kadang-kadang harta tanah di kawasan yang matang ni, dia harga dia tinggi sikit. So ramai juga yang mengatakan yang kalau dia tak mampu pun, dia mungkin akan menyewa daripada membeli, sebab dia nak kemudahan dulu di sana. So kita nampak secondary market ni memang ada permintaan dia juga. So daripada segi rumah baru tu, kalau lokasi dia di kawasan bandar, memang permintaan dia ada. So kita pun menggalakkan macam kerajaan pun ada membina rumah mampu milik kan. Kalau lokasi dia di kawasan yang memang strategik, memang permintaan dia memang ada. So daripada segi tahun depan kita nampak kalau supply untuk projek-projek dia berkurangan. Sebab di kawasan bandar pun, tanah pun dia dah macam tak banyak dah. Nak development pun tak banyak. So kita nampaklah secondary ni akan, permintaan dia akan meningkat lagi sebab peluang pekerjaan, kemudahan, transport, perhubungan semua pun dia memang dah matang dah.
Seperti yang Kian katakan tadi, pasaran hartanah dijangka meningkat secara keseluruhan juga untuk tahun ini 2024, bukan sahaja dari segi sektor kediaman tapi mahu juga komersial, dan kata penganalisis hartanah komersial dijangka berkembang berdasarkan unjuran prestasi ekonomi yang meningkat sekitar 4 hingga 5% pada 2024. Jadi Kian, apakah potensi dan cabaran harus kita perhati pada ketika ini?
Ya, saya setuju daripada segi bukan saja perumahan rumah kediaman, daripada segi pasaran hartanah komersial dan industri. Kita nampak kerajaan pun banyak membuat inisiatif industri Malaysia, National Industry Malaysia Plan 2030 tu. Banyak kawasan industri yang akan dikembangkan lah. So kita pun nampak permintaan di tanah-tanah industri, harta tanah industri pun akan berkembang. Dan banyak macam highway, macam LRT, lepas tu ada HSR, lagi banyak perkembangan highway macam di Sabah Sarawak, Pemborneo pun. Highway ni, lembur highway ni sedikit sebanyak pun ada memberi galakan kesan kepada bandar-bandar yang kecil, di mana tiba-tiba ada highway, ada transportation, ada lebuh raya berhubung dengan bandar-bandar ni, tiba-tiba bandar ni akan berkembang juga. So permintaan untuk komersial ni pun meningkat juga, sebab bila ada kediaman, komersial dia, bahagian komersial dia pun akan tidak secara tidak indirectly dia pun akan berkembang juga sebab ada permintaan untuk kemudahan. So kita nampak keseluruhan ni, dia kalau projek ni semua inisiatif ni berjalan, kita akan nampaklah dia punya perkembangan sikit, tapi taklah perkembangan secara mendadak tiba-tiba. Tapi kita nampak macam seperti yang dilaporkan, pasaran harta tanah ni dia tidak akan menjunam, dia akan terus stable permintaan dan dia dekat satu. So kita nampak sejak kebelakangan ni permintaan pun dah stable, harga pun dah stable, dia tak melonjak tiba-tiba, dia tak menjunam tiba. So kita nampak kebaikan dia agak stable lah, dia tak macam tak dapat kita tak dapat buat ramalan, dia tak betul. So sekarang kita boleh buat ramalan dengan secara tepat lah daripada segi pasaran ni.
Dan kita nantikan bagaimana pasaran ataupun itu tadi sebenarnya jangkaan daripada pakar kita, tapi kita akan saksikan bagaimana pasaran hartanah untuk masa-masa mendatang. Jadi terima kasih diucapkan kepada Tan Kian Aun, the President Malaysian Institute of Estate Agents MIEA. MN Holdings Berhad atau MNHB menerusi Mutu Nusantara Senia Berhad menerima kontrak bernilai RM98 juta berkaitan kerja-kerja penggerudian arah mendatar dan jabatan kabel untuk sebuah pusat data di selatan Semenanjung Malaysia. MNHB berkata, kontrak berkenaan melibatkan reka bentuk dan membina HDD bervoltan tinggi serta kerja berkaitan jambatan kabel untuk pusat data tersebut. Edra Power Holding Sdn Bhd memperuntukkan lebih RM400,000 bantuan pendidikan kepada lebih 10,000 pelajar sekolah rendah di 4 buah negeri menerusi program sokongan didikan Edra. Pengerusi Edra Dai Honggang berkata, 4 negeri itu meliputi Melaka, Selangor, Negeri Sembilan dan Kedah bagi menyediakan bantuan pendidikan kepada murid. Dayang Enterprise Holdings Berhad menerusi anak syarikatnya Dayang Enterprise Sdn Bhd telah menerima kontrak daripada Petronas Carigali untuk kerja-kerja penambahbaikan dan perkhidmatan berkaitan untuk penemuan integriti aset Package A bagi Sarawak All Asset berkuat kuasa mulai 15 Disember 2023 bagi tempoh 3 tahun. Dayang berkata nilai kontrak adalah berdasarkan perintah kerja yang akan dikeluarkan oleh Petronas Carigali sepanjang tempoh kontrak termasuk mana-mana kerja dan perkhidmatan lain yang berkaitan dengan skop kerja dalam kontrak. Laporan penuh di saluran 501 dan astrowani.com serta daganews.com.
Welcome aboard. Berita baik untuk pelanggan Astro. Tahun baharu ini, penghargaan diberikan kepada anda sekeluarga. Permulaan indah dengan tontonan komplimentari saluran berikut.
Sudah. I'm in.
Of course you are.
Fantastic.
내 미래를 걸어볼까 하는데.
Now you're getting it. Kemeriahan berterusan dengan long fun di saluran 100. Dan saluran baharu, hits now untuk seisi keluarga.
Let's get into it.
Hiburan tanpa henti menceriakan suasana di rumah. Masa bersama merapatkan kita.
It's time.
Astro mengucapkan selamat tahun baru kepada semua.
Kerajaan melaksanakan audit subsidi minyak masak selepas ia dijangka meningkat 4 kali ganda menjelang hujung tahun depan.
Angkatan Pertahanan Awam Malaysia APM memilih Sabah sebagai kanvas kajian bagi meremajakan semula organisasi itu.
Sarawak telah menerima kehadiran 3.18 juta pengunjung ke negeri itu, melepasi lebih awal sasaran untuk tahun 2023.
Sabah dan Sarawak mempunyai potensi besar sebagai pelengkap pusat ekonomi di Semenanjung.
Saya yakin dengan jawapan saya.
Saya rasa awak orang lama. Beliau adalah Rashidi Ishak.
Ada yang berjaya teka.
Confused sebenarnya.
Ada yang tembak saja.
Aku nak teka, aku tak tahu nama.
Jad Ali.
Ya, Izzul baliklah.
I am so in love with you.
Teruskan meneka siapa di sebalik topeng. The Mas Singa Malaysia. Siaran langsung di Astro Warna dan Astro Go.
Baru-baru ini, Pangkalan Data Utama atau PADU menjadi satu lagi usaha daripada kerajaan dalam mewujudkan sistem yang bermatlamat keterangkuman with no one left behind. Harapan akan menjadi tinggi, jangkaan pun banyak terhadap prestasi ekonomi Malaysia dan menurut Dosem juga KDNK mampu dicapai 4 hingga 5% pada tahun 2023. Daripada situ, kita nak lihat bagaimana angka ini serba sedikit menceritakan arah tuju awal dengan apa yang boleh kita jangkakan pertumbuhan Malaysia untuk suku pertama tahun 2024. Jadi kita bersama dengan tetamu yang bersedia dalam talian iaitu Ketua MIDF Research Imran Jasim Yusuf. Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi.
Baik Imran, boleh kongsikan bagaimana Imran lihat prestasi pasaran saham bursa Malaysia untuk seminggu selepas tahun baru ini?
Prestasi FBM Khaleeda amat memberangsangkan untuk seminggu selepas tahun baru ini. Malah FBM Khaleeda adalah pasaran saham terbaik berbanding dengan pasaran saham serantau. FBM Khaleeda tutup 1.6% lebih tinggi berbanding dengan level pada hari Jumaat lepas. Kalau kita bandingkan, kita lihat Jakarta 1.2% naik, Thailand 1.3% lebih tinggi, Philippines 0.8% lebih tinggi. Tapi di Singapura pula jatuh 1.3%, Nikkei 0.5%, Dow Jones 0.7%, S&P 1.7% dan Nasdaq 3.3%. Ada kemungkinan bahawa prestasi ini didorong oleh pengagihan semula pelaburan oleh pelabur asing. Kita lihat bagaimana pelabur asing memberi minat yang lebih kepada pasaran saham negara maju atau advanced market pada tahun lepas. Ini kerana jangkaan pelabur terhadap pemberhentian kenaikan kadar pinjaman di Amerika Syarikat. Namun selepas pulangan yang tinggi di pasaran saham negara maju tahun lepas, pelabur mula mencari pasaran yang ketinggalan untuk pulangan yang lebih tinggi. Jadi pasaran saham ASEAN terutama Malaysia mula menarik minat pelabur asing pada awal tahun ini.
Dan bercakap mengenai pelabur asing, kita dapat lihat bagaimana pelabur asing ini lebih kepada langkah berjaga-jaga untuk melabur di pasaran saham ASEAN dan malah pasaran saham ASEAN negeri Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines dan juga Vietnam mereka menunjukkan aliran keluar pelabur asing. Jadi apakah pendapat MIDF mengenai perkara ini dan adakah MIDF Research menjangkakan ini akan berterusan pada tahun ini atau bagaimana?
Tahun lepas kita lihat aliran keluar bersih di 5 pasaran ASEAN yang kami jejaki, iaitu Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines dan Vietnam, apa yang kita panggilkan ASEAN 5 lah. Kelima-lima pasaran ini mencatatkan aliran keluar bersih sebanyak 8.2 bilion US dollars. Disebabkan aliran keluar sebanyak 5.5 bilion US dollars di Thailand, berikutan kepada keadaan politik di sana. Malaysia pula melihat aliran keluar sebanyak 512.7 juta US dollars. Manakala 3 pasaran saham maju iaitu India, Korea Selatan dan Taiwan mencatatkan aliran masuk bersih bernilai 38.4 bilion US dollars. Tapi keadaan ini merupakan satu kebiasaan dari segi agihan pelaburan oleh pelabur asing. Kita dapat lihat daripada sejarah terdapat pencapahan antara aliran keluar masuk antara pasaran membangun dan pasaran maju. Mungkin satu tahun ini kita akan lihat aliran masuk di ASEAN tetapi akan lihat aliran keluar di pasaran negara maju seperti tahun 2022 dan sebaliknya. Jadi untuk tahun ini kami menjangkakan akan ada satu pengagihan semula dana pelaburan dan terdapat kemungkinan yang kita akan saksikan aliran masuk berterusan di pasaran ASEAN untuk tahun ini.
Dan sebelum mengakhiri, kalau kita nak recap sikit lah, sebelum akhir 2023 hari itu Imran ada bincangkan tentang jangkaan prestasi saham untuk 2024 dan faktor-faktor yang mempengaruhinya juga. Jadi adakah ada perbezaan setelah seminggu pasaran saham berdagang untuk tahun baru ini?
Untuk buat masa ini kita tak ada perbezaan daripada segi jangkaan kami untuk tahun 2024. Kami menjangkakan terdapat 4 faktor utama yang akan mempengaruhi ekonomi dan pasaran saham tempatan. Satu adalah pemulihan perdagangan luar. Kita lihat bagaimana ekspor tahun lepas turun berbanding dengan tahun sebelumnya. Ini kerana kelemahan permintaan global dan syarikat mengurangkan inventory mereka. Jadi untuk 2024 kami menjangkakan akan ada pemulihan. Pelaksanaan inisiatif kerajaan yang diumumkan tahun lepas, lebih lagi National Energy Transition Roadmap dan projek infra, penerusan pemulihan ekonomi China dan pemberhentian kenaikan kadar pinjaman di US. Faktor keempat yang akan memberi dorongan untuk mengukuhkan juga bukan saja pasaran saham tetapi juga daripada pasaran mata wang. Keempat faktor ini akan memacu pertumbuhan ekonomi dan pasaran saham. Jadi kami menjangkakan ekonomi Malaysia akan berkembang 47% dan untuk pasaran saham unjuran kami untuk akhir tahun 2024 adalah IBM KSL yang akan ditutup pada paras 1665.
Dan bagaimana pula faktor-faktor yang di sebaliknya? Apakah faktor yang mungkin akan memberi impak negatif pada pasaran saham untuk tahun ini, Imran?
Terdapat 4 faktor positif, tetapi dari segi negatifnya atau yang apa yang kami katakan downside risk, terdapat 2 faktor utama yang boleh membangkitkan prestasi FBM KLCI dan pertumbuhan ekonomi. Satu adalah potensi untuk Amerika Syarikat mengalami kegawatan ekonomi. Ini berdasarkan isyarat yang diberikan di pasaran bond di US dan juga kalau kita lihat ekonomi data seperti US Leading Economy Index menunjukkan kemungkinan akan ada kegawatan ekonomi di US. Jika berlaku kegawatan ekonomi di US, maka ini akan menukarkan sentimen pelabur kepada sentimen negatif. Di samping itu, ekonomi global juga akan terjejas dan ini akan menjejaskan pulangan syarikat yang tersenarai di Bursa Malaysia. Faktor yang kedua adalah impak daripada konflik di Timur Tengah. Di sini kami maksudkan jika konflik di Gaza merebak menjadi konflik serantau di mana Iran, Syria, US, Hezbollah dan sebagainya menyertai konflik di Gaza. Ini akan menyebabkan kenaikan harga minyak, menjejaskan kadar inflasi dan harga barang serta menyukarkan laluan perkapalan. Again, ini akan memberi impak pada inflasi dan kedua-dua ini adalah downside risk yang kami jangkakan jika ia berlaku akan memberi impak yang besar kepada pertumbuhan ekonomi dan pasaran saham Malaysia.
Jadi bagaimana Imran menjangkakan untuk kadar KDNK pada suku-suku mendatang tahun ini?
Kami menjangkakan 40.7%. Jadi kami menjangkakan pada suku pertama dan suku kedua KDNK akan lebih pesat bertumbuh. Ini adalah kerana apa yang kita katakan low base effect. Tahun lepas pertumbuhan kurang memberangsangkan pada separuh tahun pertama. Jadi untuk separuh tahun pertama tahun ini kami menjangkakan akan ada satu recovery lah, pemulihan daripada segi kadar pembangunan ekonomi negara. Yang kedua pula, selain daripada low base effect adalah daripada segi ekspor. Kami melihatkan bagaimana tahun lepas suku pertama dan kedua, bagaimana ekspor terjejas, ekspor Malaysia terjejas oleh seperti saya cakapkan tadi, oleh pengurangan permintaan dan sebagainya. Jadi untuk tahun ini, suku pertama dan kedua, kita melihat akan ada pemulihan daripada perdagangan luar dan ini akan memberi sokongan kepada ekonomi Malaysia, pertumbuhan ekonomi Malaysia pada suku pertama.
Jadi apakah antara sentimen, terutama sentimen dalaman lah yang kita perlu berhati-hati sebelum kita terima pengumuman kadar OPR akan datang?
Ada perubahan, iaitu akan kekal pada 3%. Jadi dari segi sentimen, kami menjangkakan ia tidak akan memberi impak kepada sentimen pelabur. Disebabkan kadar OPR akan tidak ada perbezaan daripada kadar OPR daripada 3%. Kami menjangkakan juga daripada segi borrowers lah, tidak akan ada impak yang besar juga lah. Tetapi ia juga akan memberi satu impak yang positif kerana pada sektor hartanah. Kerana dengan ini ia akan meningkatkan atau memberi pembeli-pembeli hartanah untuk rasa lebih confident lah kerana kadar OPR tidak akan berubah untuk tahun ini. Malah kami menjangkakan walaupun OPR tidak berubah disebabkan oleh juga sebab seperti kadar inflasi yang menurun dan sebagainya, dan juga daripada segi di US di mana kadar pinjaman mereka dijangkakan akan bukan saja tidak berubah tapi akan dipotong untuk tahun ini.
Baik, terima kasih diucapkan kepada Imran Yassin Mat Yusof, Ketua MIDF Research, dan semua perkongsian ini akan kami rangkumkan dalam platform astroawani.com dan semua platform digital Astro Awani. Baik, kami akan berhenti rehat seketika, kembali selepas ini. Penutupan kilang berjadual semasa Tahun Baru Cina tahun ini dijangka menjejaskan kadar pemulihan dalam industri semikonduktor. Kenanga Research berkata, Perangkaan Perdagangan Semikonduktor Dunia WSTS bagaimanapun menjangkakan pertumbuhan 13.1% dalam jualan semikonduktor global pada 2024 diterajui chip memori dan litar bersepadu logik, terutamanya di Amerika Syarikat dan Asia Pasifik. MISC Berhad yang 51% dikuasai oleh Syarikat Minyak Nasional Petroleum Nasional Berhad atau Petronas mengumumkan pelantikan Effendi Muhammad Ali sebagai Ketua Pegawai Kewangan baharunya. Pelantikannya akan berkuat kuasa mulai 1 Mac menggantikan Raja Azlan Shah Raja Azwa yang memegang jawatan CFO sejak April 2019. Farma Niaga Berhad yang disenaraikan di bawah kategori Nota Amalan 17 memeterai perjanjian konsensi dengan Kementerian Kesihatan KKM untuk perkhidmatan bekalan perubatan selama tempoh 7 tahun. Pharma Niaga berkata, perjanjian antara KKM dan Pharma Niaga Logistik Sedia Berhad berkuat kuasa secara retrospektif dari 1 Julai 2023 hingga 30 Jun 2030 bertakluk kepada penamatan lebih awal. Laporan penuh di saluran 501 dan astrowani.com serta daganus.com. Baik, pada ketika ini saya akan teruskan dengan pergerakan ringgit di mana ringgit mengakhiri urus niaga Khamis pada paras hampir tidak berubah berbanding dolar Amerika Syarikat selepas minit mesyuarat jawatan kuasa pasaran terbuka FOMC negara maju itu tidak memberi tempoh masa mengenai tarikh sebenar penurunan kadar faedah utama. Dan pada 6 petang ringgit berada di paras 4.6330 atau 6370 berbanding dolar Amerika daripada 4.6300 pada akhir urus niaga pada Rabu. Dan untuk setakat hari ini 5 Januari 2023 ringgit berada pada paras 4.645 antara 4.7 dan juga 4.6 dan secara keseluruhan dalam jangka masa setahun ia menunjukkan trend ataupun data menaik dan ini menandakan ringgit itu melemah. Dan dalam jangka masa ini juga pada paras tertinggi ia berada paras hampir mencecah paras 4.8 ringgit dan pada paras terendah pada bulan Februari ia berada dalam sekitar bawah sedikit untuk 4.3. Kalau boleh saya tunjukkan dalam jangka masa seminggu. Dalam jangka masa seminggu, ringgit akan berada dalam paras untuk kalau hari ini 4.6, kalau pada hari 4 hari bulan, ia pada paras sekitar bawah sedikit 4.63 dan sebelum awal sikit pada 2 hari bulan, ia menunjukkan ringgit mengukuh pada paras lebih sikit 4.58 dan itu untuk pergerakan ringgit. Dan saya teruskan dengan Bursa Malaysia meneruskan aliran meningkatnya untuk ditutup hari Khamis berikutan peningkatan minat daripada pelabur runcit dan penstrukturan semula portfolio oleh pelabur institusi dan asing, kata seorang penganalisis. Pada 5 petang semalam, FTSE Bursa Malaysia KLCI atau FPM KLCI meningkat 1.01% atau 14.89 mata kepada 1477.26 daripada paras penutup 1462.37 pada Rabu. Dan kalau boleh saya kongsikan prestasi Bursa Malaysia setakat jam 9.16 pagi hari ini, ia berada pada paras 1478.04 dan ia meningkat sebanyak 0.05 dan juga peningkatan sebanyak 0.8 dan ini adalah perkembangan terkini yang mereka berikan iaitu peningkatan sebanyak 0.8 dan peningkatan sebanyak juga 0.05%. Dan kalau boleh saya tunjukkan dalam sekitar 5 hari. Dalam sekitar 5 hari bermula Jumaat minggu lepas sehinggalah Jumaat hari ini. Hari ini menunjukkan paras tertinggi untuk Bursa Malaysia yang hampir mencecah 1480 dan kadar terendah ia pula berada di bawah sekitar 1450 mata. Dan secara dari keseluruhannya anda dapat melihat trend peningkatan dari Jumaat sedikit menurun dan kemudian Selasa menunjukkan sedikit peningkatan ke Rabu, Khamis dan tertinggi ialah pada hari ini Jumaat. Dan saya akan teruskan dengan let's take a deep dive into the US market. We will start with one of the largest sector within the S&P 500 which is the technology. Dan ini this is how you can see the overall look of the market. It shows a lot of sort of red and pink color over here and I'll start with the biggest sector of technology which is the Microsoft, which was down by the 0.72% and stood at the level of 367.94. And the latest updates on Microsoft, it said that it is adding a button to its Windows keyboard that would pull up the tech giant's Copilot service in the first change for the device in nearly 3 decades. The Copilot key announced on Thursday marks the latest effort by the company, which is investing billions in AI to incorporate the technology in its products. The addition of the key underscores the the Redmond, Washington-based company's ambitions for AI-enabled PCs. These machines work on advanced chips capable of running large language models and apps powered by the technology directly on the device instead of the phone. All right, moving on. The other sector is Apple. It shows that it was down by 1.27% and stood at the level of 181.91, and the latest updates on Apple that it continued to struggle in the new year on Thursday, plumbing an 8-week low after Piper Sandler handed the tech giant its second downgrade this week on worries about iPhone demand. The rating action knocked Apple shares 1.4% down and $181.6, causing its market value to decline nearly $170 billion so far in the opening week of 2024. And Apple still remains the most valuable company by market value worldwide, with a capitalization of over $2.8 trillion. And its recent declines put it only 8% below an all-time high closing price in mid-December. And despite the downgrade from Piper and Barclays 2 days earlier, there are still at least 27 analysts who have a buy or higher rating company. And that's on Apple. Moving on to Nvidia. It shows a green color here, which it shows that it was upped by 0.90% and stood at the point of 479.98. And Nvidia's search startup Prestasi AI has raised $37.6 million from a group of investors, including Nvidia and Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, the latest example of investors hunting for AI startups that challenge the incumbents. The round was led by the venture capital firm IVP and valued the company at about $520 million, according to company. NEA, Nvidia, Databricks, and Besar venture partners also participated in the round. And Prestasi searches tools enable users to get instant answers to questions with sources and also citations. It is powered by a variety of large language models, or LLMs, that can sum up and generate information from OpenAI to Meta's open source model Llama. And San Francisco, California-based Prestasi AI, which raised by $23.6 million much last year in round led by NEA, said it has served more than 500 million queries in 2023 while spending few marketing dollars. All right, next up is Google. Let me show you Google. It shows sort of like a pinkish color here. It was down by 1.65% and stood at the level or point of 138.04. Qualcomm on Thursday said Samsung Electronics shows that the Alphabet's Google plan to use a new computing chip it designed to power mixed and virtual reality headsets. And the Qualcomm chip, called the Snapdragon XR2 Plus Generation 2, will be able to handle data feeds from a dozen cameras inside the headset. It comes as competition to sell what are known as mixed reality headsets, where a view of the outside world is passed through to the user via cameras, is expected to heat up this year with Apple's release of its Vision Pro headset. And TF International Securities analyst Ming Chin Ko said the iPhone maker could start selling at the price of $3,500. And Google and Samsung did not specify the products in which they plan to use the new Qualcomm chip. And the last one is Meta. It was upped by 0.77% and stood at the level of 347.12. And the latest update on Meta is Mark Zuckerberg sold nearly $500 million of Meta platform's shares in the final 2 months of 2023 after a two-year hiatus in which the company's stock price hit its lowest in 7 years. The Meta chief executive sold shares on every trading day between November 1st and the end of the year, and unloading nearly 1.28 million shares for about $428 million, according to Tuesday regulatory filing. On average, each sale took $10.4 million, with the largest on December 28th and $17.1 million. And before this period, Zuckerberg had not sold Meta shares since November 2021. And the company's share price rebounded 194% last year from a 7-year low near the end of 2022. And Meta shares outperformed those of every other major tech giant except Nvidia Corporation and last year, and is now near its September 2021 record high. All right, moving on to our next update. I can share to you now is the Tesla. All right.
For Tesla, it shows that it was upped by. Let me search for Tesla. It will take some time over here. All right, it's here. All right, it shows that it was down by 0.22% and stood at the level of 237.93. And latest updates on Tesla, the company's managers delivered the news to salaried employees, and the report stated, adding that the 4 employees from different departments told Bloomberg News that they believe the move was widespread. Alright, saya akan sambung dengan perkembangan seterusnya. 2 hari selepas dilancarkan, Menteri Ekonomi Rafizi Ramli mendedahkan pendaftaran pangkalan data utama padu merekodkan jumlah yang tinggi dalam kalangan penduduk bandar. Menurutnya, setakat jam 4 petang Khamis, seramai 516,168 rakyat Malaysia telah mendaftar sebelum sistem itu. Seramai 261,158 daripadanya sudah selesai proses eKYC, kenali pelanggan anda menerusi platform digital.
Daripada jumlah itu, pendaftaran paling tinggi direkodkan melibatkan penduduk di Selangor. Selepas 2 hari, masalah utama melibatkan sistem itu berjaya diselesaikan dalam tempoh 24 jam dan beliau yakin pendaftaran padu akan terus meningkat selepas 48 jam.
Dengan kadar sebegini, saya ingat selepas 48 jam pertama, kita akan melepasi 600,000, saya ingat tak ada masalah, 600,000 pendaftar. Tumpuan pasukan padu di peringkat kerajaan ialah untuk kita mengunjurkan dan memahami pola pendaftaran untuk tempoh seminggu, 2 minggu akan datang untuk kita menangani risiko kececeran. Kerana kalau rakan media lihat, kami sudah mula memberi maklumat pecahan pendaftaran mengikut negeri. Sudah tentu yang paling banyak mendaftar ialah kawasan bandar, paling tinggi Selangor. Jadi kita beranggapan bahawa perkara ini akan berterusan dan dengan unjuran pola pendaftaran itu, ia akan membantu pasukan padu untuk menggerakkan flying squad dan juga tumpuan-tumpuan untuk memastikan bahawa take up rate ataupun pendaftaran itu adalah sekata di seluruh Malaysia.
Beliau berkata demikian pada sidang media pasca peluncuran pangkalan data utama padu di Putrajaya pada Khamis.
Melihat perkembangan pendaftaran padu, Rafizi mengakui beliau gembira dengan situasi itu, apatah lagi selepas mengambil kira lebih 200,000 pendaftaran dalam masa sehari. Tambahnya, jumlah itu sebenarnya sudah dijangka berdasarkan rekod pendaftaran melibatkan sistem kerajaan sebelum ini.
It is as expected sebab kita melihat kepada peak access kepada aplikasi-aplikasi kerajaan sebelum ini bila buka pendaftaran dan sebagainya, kerana kita perlukan itu untuk menentukan maksimum bandwidth yang kita kena allocate awal-awal. Our estimate sebelum ini ialah access the record sebelum ini, access selalunya dalam 500,000 satu hari. Semalam adalah peak access kita melepasi 700,000, yang access 700,000, yang mendaftar sekitar 200,000 orang. Jadi kalau ikut expectation, memang it is going as planned. Cuma kita juga sedia maklum bahawa interest itu selalunya peaking awal, kemudian dia akan slow down.
Rafizi Ramli mengkritik tindakan sesetengah pihak yang mempersoalkan pelaksanaan sistem pangkalan data utama padu dan mengaitkan dengan akta tertentu sedangkan mereka tidak begitu faham akta tersebut. Menteri Ekonomi itu berkata hujah yang digunakan adalah berkaitan akta perlindungan data pribadi selain menggesa sistem itu tidak dilaksanakan sehingga akta itu ditambah baik.
I know that is everyone's concern about data security. Tapi kita juga kena faham bahawa penjawat awam mempunyai berpuluh akta yang mengawal selia pengendalian data. Yang risiko yang ada ni bukan sangat semata-mata di penjawat awam. Dia sebenarnya dengan segala aplikasi yang kita ada ni. So we have to be fair lah dari segi itu. And I find it very difficult to comprehend that before this we don't have a problem dengan mendaftar di sana, mendaftar di sini, jabatan kerajaan and so on. Suddenly bila kerajaan nak digitalize the service, and for us to digitalize the service, we need a central database like this. Suddenly semua jadi terpaling data. So I think we have to be fair about that, and understanding the whole concept itu adalah sangat penting, because otherwise we look silly. If we start talking about akta yang kita tak faham, then we look silly.
Jabatan kerajaan seperti Jabatan Pendaftaran Negara dan Jabatan Pengangkutan Jalan mempunyai akta tersendiri dalam mengendalikan data awam. Pun begitu, syarikat swasta tidak mempunyai akta seperti itu hingga menyebabkan PDPA dilaksanakan untuk mengawal data yang dikongsi. Beliau berkata demikian sebagai respon terhadap kenyataan Lawyers for Liberty yang berpendapat sistem itu tidak harus dilancarkan selagi PDPA tidak diperkasakan.
Baik, kita akan berhenti rehat seketika. Jangan ke mana-mana, kita akan bersama dengan Tehmina Kaoosji dalam Niaga Spotlight selepas ini.
Konflik Palestin-Israel memperlihatkan dunia zahir sokongan pada Hari Perpaduan Antarabangsa bersama rakyat Palestin.
3 jumlah negeri sudah pun terkesan akibat banjir, antaranya adalah Terengganu, Kelantan dan juga Selangor.
Berkenaan dengan SPRM beku akaun NGO Aman Palestin penyelewengan dana RM70 juta ringgit.
Berkenaan dengan penipuan pakej umrah, polis terima lebih 300 laporan yang melibatkan kerugian 14 juta ringgit.
I love you so much.
I akan cuba yakinkan Papa yang you boleh gantikan tempat dia as soon as possible.
Kesempurnaan seorang isteri tidak menjamin kesetiaan suami.
Love you, Mom.
You're the most.
Hi, Boss. Kak Saida, jangan risau. Su akan jagakan.
Lelaki, lagi kita tahan dia, lagi dia nak buat.
Kalau kita tak kontrol, boleh makin meliar, Ma.
Perselingkuhan menjadikan cinta semakin menjauh.
Kita tunggu kita punya CEO sekejap.
Hai.
Cincin kertas je.
Someday, there will be a diamond ring. Layang-layang perkahwinan di Astro Ria dan Astro Go.
Perkembangan situasi semasa.
Wujud kenaikan harga ayam
memang berlaku di tempat-tempat tertentu.
Kementerian Sumber Manusia akan menjalankan operasi di seluruh negara.
Kita mahu menghindari unsur-unsur buruh paksa di negara kita.
Berkenaan aspek kawasalia di TikTok Shop.
Rumuskan dan kita kumpulkan apa tindakan pihak kerajaan.
Sudah tahu salah namun tetap berdegil.
Kamu boleh tengok semua channel Astro. Astro First pun ada.
Hanya di Awani 745.
Hello and welcome to Niaga Spotlight with me, Tehmina. Niaga Spotlight goes through the week in business and future affairs, market watch, industries, analysis and insights. We've got you covered right here on Niaga Spotlight. Well, this week on Future Affairs, it's Niaga Spotlight Forecast for Malaysia's big data industry in 2024. Now, a brief overview before we begin. Malaysia is positioned to be a big data analytics or a BDA hub in the ASEAN region and Asia. This is, of course, in line with the government's targets for the industry. We've actually, in fact, emerged as a top destination in Southeast Asia for data center investment worth an impressive 76 billion ringgit between 2021 and March 2023 alone. Well, meanwhile, it's essential for Malaysia to address a significant challenge: deep talent shortages in this crucial industry. Niaga Spotlight Forecast today will be looking at Malaysia's big data industry and also what's predicted to happen with AI, Gen AI, LLMs, BI, data science and data engineering in 2024. Sharla Aksert, founder and CEO Center of the Applied Data Science, CAT, joins me now in the studios for this focused discussion. Good morning, Sharla. How are you today?
Morning, Tam. Really good. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic to have you in the hot seat, Shah. So let's begin by discussing Malaysia's incredible data center boom. Those figures are nothing to laugh at. Now, what do you think is actually perhaps some of the main factors behind such great regional as well as global interest for investing in data centers in Malaysia?
I think we are really blessed, right, with land and talent in this part of the country. And I think you would say, oh yeah, so is Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand have the land. But this shows that, you know, Malaysia has invested a lot on infrastructure to accommodate the digital economy that we'll be talking about. So if you look at Malaysia, data internet penetration is 80%. You know what's the global average? It's only 50%. So that shows, great.
A huge uptick. That's like what? At least 30% on average.
All right. And that shows great faith in Malaysia, right? And having said that, it is not self-evident for the talents. So we actually have to put a lot of work to make sure there's talent to support this investment. But having said that, this is an upgrade from manufacturing.
All right.
Okay?
Absolutely.
That doesn't make us the Silicon Valley. So we are not an innovative hub. It's just an upgrade from manufacturing.
Right. So being at an upgrade from manufacturing itself, I think we're looking at the fact that we've got a lot of expansive land availability, as well as power resources and a lot of global connectivity. So to build upon that a little bit, perhaps if you have any perspectives around how Johor has also become quite the hub, attracting potentially up to perhaps even 10 global tech players, once again, for BDA investments. But at the same time, maybe they're going to be attracting around 5 of them in total. Any perspectives around that?
I think any kind of investment on tech will allow us to become an innovative nation. And we talked about it earlier, right? The kind of talent we produce will determine what kind of investors we're going to get.
Right.
So we are in part to that. But then again, what kind of investment that we are pulling in is going to determine whether we're going to be just an upgrade in manufacturing or we're going to be the innovation hub that we talked about.
Exactly. So when it comes to the fact that these global tech players that are going into Johor, they are actually many of those who already have a presence in Singapore. What are some of the similarities, in your opinion, that both Singapore and Malaysia have actually been playing off, attracting this kind of data center investment? And also, any thoughts on what Singapore has been doing, which has helped them to go past that manufacturing and then that next step into the more knowledge-based sector?
I think one of the key things, Singapore from early on has adopted the AI strategy.
Right.
And we know that any country, any organization has this vision of what having this AI as the main strategy in the country, and the organization will have a leap forward than anybody else. And I think they got that right. And we are a little bit slow in catching up, but we are getting there. You know, I'm always about it's better to start than never, right? Everything in Singapore is expensive. Land is expensive, right? But they've always been clever in doing the talent retention. They always have a bucket list. They make sure they attract the best talent in this region. And what Malaysia has going for ourselves is, like I said, we have been blessed by the land and by the talent, right? But Malaysia does have the biggest brain drain in ASEAN.
Yeah,
and there's a gap between the kind of skills we create and why talents leave the country.
Absolutely, and I'd love to really dig our teeth into that a little bit later, though. However, let's go back into looking at all the bulk of investments in excess of 76 billion ringgit. Now, do you feel that there ought to be a limit to how many, especially hyperscale data centers or HDCs, that we are able to accommodate comfortably? I don't mean via land capacity, because that is, of course, in comparison to some neighbors such as Singapore, is pretty limitless in Malaysia. But let's look more at energy consumption, power and such like, which is also what led to Singapore having more recently the moratorium, right, on any more HDCs there.
I think that's really important. The government needs to keep an eye on that. You know, Sweden leads in a sustainable data center, and they have data center in the coldest and the remotest area in Sweden because of the energy that it consumes and it lets out, right? I like to give this story. When I was studying in university 25 years ago, and I know my age now, but you know, golf course was a big boom in this part of the world, right? It was a huge industry, tourism and stuff like that. Then suddenly we were hit by a shortage of water. And who had to pay the price for it? It was the rakyat, right? We had to conserve water for 2 days, you know, get the pails, the baldi, be it. And then these industries need to be accommodated. So if the government doesn't keep track of this. You know, when there's a demand, the need goes up, and you cannot tax the rakyat anymore because the energy is already heavily subsidized.
It already is,
right? And
clearly.
TNB is doing a great job in looking at the green part to support these data centers.
Correct.
But it needs to be monitored. It needs to have a lookout. So we don't end up, you know, the rakyat don't end up fighting for the same energy source like we did for water.
Exactly. And I love the fact that you actually brought up the example of Sweden, because that reminds me as well, Shah, the fact that it is a challenge, in fact, to have any kind of a data center located within a tropical climate where it's already warm. But of course, you need to keep the temperature at optimal. So while it may be on one hand, perhaps a little bit damaging to the environment in a very cold country, what about in a very hot country? Yes. So when it comes to managing that, do you reckon there's a need for perhaps a central policy that regulates and maybe even oversees sustainability? We've been talking a lot about sustainability. COP28, of course, finished not so long ago. Malaysia, of course, has its zero target goals when it comes to environment as well as carbon, right?
Yeah. I think the stage we are, that needs to happen because we are in a developing country, right? In Sweden, there's this whole culture about trust-based and doing the right thing and about the environment. People look at living in peace with the environment and the person next door to you. So I think it took them 100 years to get there. You know what I mean? So when you are a high innovative nation where the system takes care of you, you pay a huge amount of tax and they have trust. It's a very trust-based culture, right? And it's easy for them to decide we're going to go to the remotest place and we're going to do this huge data center where energy is an issue, right? And not bring down the whole climate. Whereas
so it's pretty strategic planning.
Yes, and for countries like us, where you know it's an opportunity of investment, which means GDP, which means greater opportunity for the rakyat, it needs to have some kind of framework, monitoring, and baseline for this.
Absolutely, and I think this perhaps ought to be integrated with the wider national energy transition policy and roadmap, right?
Yes,
fantastic. Thank you for bringing that up. From there, Shah, let's move on into the fact that the pandemic, of course, was a game changer in terms of demand for BDA, big data analytics, backed by surging demand for data, cloud services. So, what are some key areas or trends that you're able to discern will be popular in 2024?
So first of all, we saw the MDAC report with IDC about the growth, 1.1 billion to 1.9 billion. That's what BDA is supposed to.
Correct, by 2025.
Yeah, but it's not enough.
Incredible.
Not being ambitious enough.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
Think about it, right?
Tell me.
So AI is here. It's exponential growth.
ChatGPT is a part of everyone's life.
It's not linear growth. So an individual with AI will surpass any individual without AI. So I think we are not ambitious enough in that, So I think we are not embracing these changes that generative AI is doing. So if you're talking about key trends, I mean, AI, generative AI, cybersecurity, cloud computing, they're not trends anymore, right? They've been there for the longest, and the demand is always going to be there. What is going to be key in this future, the 2024? It's going to be a skill economy. So what it's going to be is you're going to democratize skills in an organization, which will be a strategy. It will be skills first transformation. It will be making sure your workforce is data and AI literate. That means you're going to democratize skills that everybody will understand the use of data and AI and no more centralized. It's going to be beyond the data scientists of the world.
That's right. It's all about, scaling it so that every single person within an organization is able to
understand.
Exactly. And understanding and practicing it as well is quite different, though. From there, let's talk about the fact that you've mentioned that we're not being ambitious enough. So perhaps, let me just posit this to you. What about a cluster of partnerships going into this industry, which is basically, government-linked companies or GLCs, perhaps? They have the financial capability, but then them forming partnerships with the private sector so that we can have more that is local, Malaysian, but that is connected to the wider global infrastructure.
I love that. And I think that's something that we've been talking for years now, especially for entrepreneurs and high growth tech companies, right?
Yep.
rightfully, GLCs, government-linked companies are the highest employers in this country, and we're slightly different from the states. They're the biggest employers, and they need to work with, if you want to get local players to go global, we need them to buy local. Right? To
literally, so
yes,
that, yes.
literally. So invest. We used to talk about belilah barangan buatan tempatan, right? Beli local fruits, right? And with this huge technology, and we want to get more tech companies from the country, this is perfect to do the private-public partnership and elevate them, because most of these companies are in Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, and you imagine as you grow, you bring the local companies with the right caliber and tech, right? And it has to be meritocracy. It has to be the right technology that you help them, get that and validate them in the global market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, of course, we are in 2024 now. Saying it and doing it is two different things, though. What kind of a structure do you think might help accelerate this kind of a vision for a lot more Malaysian-made big data analytics, also considering and touching lightly upon the fact that we do have our data security issues?
So if you look at, in the US and Europe, right, you have special location for female businesses, right? So we could do the same thing with local businesses, because the requirement for a lot of these companies to engage local businesses is literally global standards. And we all are trying to make it in a local market, right? So I think it's important to have that category. We could give, tax incentive for companies to adopt more local practitioners. That could help companies to want to use local. And also shift in the mindset for these private organizations to start sourcing out, tech companies internally. Singapore's already doing that for a while now, right? So that's a mind shift, that it doesn't always have to be a global player. The standards is that if you want to get that, you need to invest in local players to get that. So we need to create exception with the right, like you said, security. It's very expensive for small companies to put in.
So it does need to be a bigger infrastructure, right? So that everybody jumps on board.
Yes. So if big companies could subsidize getting small companies to work on security while they implement the system in the company, that would be so helpful for local tech companies.
Local tech companies, exactly. Lots to chew upon over there. So from the huge investments being made, Shana, of course, that brings up the opportunity for plenty of jobs. But at the same time, we've actually got a very deep talent shortage. One thing on the bright side, perhaps, is that this isn't unique to Malaysia alone. The technology industry in general is facing a huge global shortage of workers, anywhere from 3 to 4 million folks or packs. When it comes to Malaysia, you've also often spoken about your vision for, of course, us moving more towards a high-income nation, especially via upskilling in time. So thoughts about how we can actually close that skills talent gap, particularly with our fresh undergraduates and those who are still perhaps in university without doing something which is too uncomfortable, perhaps.
Yeah, I think it's not just enough for us to know what is the current skills that we have in the country or in the organization. I think it's important to know what we have today and how to get that individual into the skills that years to come.
Sure.
Okay? And that cannot be done manually. This is why I founded CATS, right? It's important to automate this process, because it needs to be quick. 30% of the skills that we know has gone, right? It doesn't exist, but in 5 years' time, 65% that we have, skills that we have today, will not exist. So how do we keep up with that? And that's why, I came back, and it was important to build this platform, because every profession, be it journalism, legal, finance, university graduates in whatever faculty, need to have AI and data skills as part of their portfolio, right? So you will have a chance to make a difference, automate things in the job you do, and it cannot be that IT guy that you're going to call upon to kind of change the work that you do.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think about the fact that there's also a lack of education and training programs, particularly in the Malaysian higher education market, that specialize in data center technology? What would be your what would be top of your list if you were able to suggest what kind of programs need to be targeted towards our young people?
We have to stop. This is very controversial for me to say this, right? In the whole world of data and AI, we should stop streaming, right? We should stop saying that only IT guys can do this job, only mathematicians can do modeling for engineering. We have had, in Astro, we had a Mandarin graduate who became a data scientist who takes care of your Mandarin channel. Right? So this is what the vision is, that we grew up with streamlining, and then saying that if you got straight A's, you got to do that. But the skills is always about what you can apply in your job.
And what you
domain,
pick up.
Right? Yeah. So your domain is journalism. Imagine you are embedded with that skill and you can do a lot more in that than giving it to an IT guy who doesn't understand your domain.
Right. So let's say we've got a lot of hyper-specialization right now. For example, lots of the better faculties around Malaysia, they actually have plenty of engineering undergraduates. But do they have to, or how could they be streamed then into the big data and analytics industry?
This aches me because, I'm a telecommunication engineer, which the cost doesn't exist anymore.
Fair. That's okay.
But that's the whole point, that we tend to create graduates with skills in 4 years' time they come out, industries that might not survive this whole disruption. Okay?
True.
So I think it's important to set them with the fundamentals, which is really important, like talk about data visualization, analytical thinking, and to be able to tell stories out of data. If you get that in every faculty, being doctor, medicine, being what I say, non-technical field, social economy,
right?
These will just elevate people starting to use data, and then they will adopt innovation and technology seamlessly. So you don't have to force feed, or you got to use digital, you got to apply technology.
Exactly. So even looking at the social sciences as an arena for that. Now, what about a lack of awareness amongst existing undergraduates and young people about these kind of opportunities in data centers?
Oh, definitely. I remember we started something called Data Star because I was so tired of people saying Malaysian local graduates are unemployable. I come from a local university, right? And then we have the highest brain drain. So there's this gap between, what we have and what we're losing. And I think it's important that people understand that. It's important to get graduates exposed. I said that in Asia, if you're not an engineer, lawyer, or a doctor, you're an Asian F. Right? So
that's a good one.
Yeah, I had parents who would come with the kids asking, oh, what is this data science, data engineering? My son studied actuaries, right? So this mindset in parents, educating, being in the media, talking about it, there's this demand, this skills that doesn't feel in the traditional, right, has to change. That's how we're going to be innovative. What you study not necessarily guarantees you the job that you want.
And it doesn't have to be the same format that it was even 5 years ago, right?
Okay. They might not exist in the next
True. All right, now that we're also on the point of looking at the future workforce, Shah, I have to ask you, also a strong advocate for women in the workforce, and particularly women in STEM, women in tech. Now, what could we do better to ensure that, of course, we are actually seeing the stats skew more towards female undergraduates and graduates than male. And this is something which is not unusual for all developing as well as high-income countries. How can we make sure women who already make up a smaller proportion of STEM graduates then actually get to stay on in the STEM sectors that they choose, even BDA?
Yeah, I again, right, I get a lot of this talks that I need to get women to be in STEM. I think that's not the problem. Okay, if you look at STEM education, women are the highest in university, in science stream, in school. Okay, 70% of the university graduates you talked about, it's about 60. We still are the largest. We study. Girls are good at studying, right? And then the issue becomes we don't stay in the workforce. So
once we begin our families.
Yes. So then I've stopped telling women getting into STEM. I just tell them, please stay in the workforce. And I think that happens because you know, women don't stay on because they don't see enough women out there having it all. It might look like people ask, I run a business, I've got 2 kids, how do I do it all? But there's sacrifices that we have to do, and you need to get support system. And I've acknowledged I don't have to be a superwoman. So what I tell women at workplace is, what we can do is go and mentor, and even if you're not asked by another female, I think that's paying forward. I think women needs female mentors, and girls in school needs role model, and they don't see enough of us out there going out and saying it's okay to have a job and not and not be the supermom all the time.
I love the fact that you're actually talking about paying it forward and perhaps even seeking out women to mentor, even if they don't ask, right?
Women don't ask. That's
fair enough. Fair enough. I will resonate with that. All right. So from there, Shah, we're actually going to continue on the discussion because we might actually be waiting for a live cross, which will go into the Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim's speech, which has been happening or is expected to occur soon. Meanwhile, we continue the discussion with Sharala in the studio. So let's look at the features of big data, which also spawn issues relating to privacy, data profiling, lack of transparency, etc. What would a big data law, perhaps, to regulate various aspects of AI and even big data usage, what might that entail? Just to set the ground, early in 2024.
I'm not a big fan on setting up,
more regulations.
Regulation because it curbs innovation, right? So I'm not a big fan. But having said that, right, putting a brake is not an option, right? Because if you putting a brake means there will be countries that do not have brakes and they're far ahead with AI and innovation. But having said that, it's really important to put the brakes on important things. Like if you look at EU that just passed a law about facial recognition, monitoring people wherever they are any time of the day. Now that is definitely a path to a greater evil. That could go so wrong. And I think that's why it's important to educate people and understand, responsible AI, ethical AI at every level.
Correct.
Right? And then companies need to think about the trade-offs. If you have the full-blown AI and data that you could do, the outcome is amazing, but at what cost? Right? So to be able to understand putting brakes on just major things that can cause greater evil needs to stop that. Is it worth the money that we get?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that kind of regulatory, like EU is a good place to look at. And I'm also, like I said, I'm not a big fan in putting a stop on innovation because all this stops innovation. But what is the greater good that we're trying to accomplish?
Sure. And speaking of the greater good we're trying to accomplish, one thing that I must intervene and ask you here. Now, with, of course, the rate of internet penetration in Malaysia, digitalization is absolutely a given, even for children who are under the age of, let's say, 5, right? So what kind of data privacy, etc., wider regulations would be ideal to help protect children online?
That's really important. I think my kids, right? And I remember like companies were looking at digital literacy, and I go like, what digital literacy? My kids are born with digital literacy, right? They can do Canva, and I'm still struggling with PowerPoint.
And toddlers know how to press on a smartphone.
Yes. Swipe.
That's right. That's right.
But I think, some schools have done it well, and we try to do that at home. A few of my friends is all about, we need to monitor what the kids are doing, and we need to make sure that they shouldn't have phones. And we've gone the Swedish way. We've gone on a trust base, right? Because you cannot stop the kids doing what they want to do. But the only thing we could do is educate them, and be there when things go wrong, or to have the constant conversation. I think as Asian parents.
So digital literacy.
Yes, and we do not have that difficult conversation. Data, like I always share with my kids that what happens, why you're targeted, why you're getting this advertisement, because there's an algorithm out there that's constantly monitoring what you're doing.
Sure.
And no matter how much you try to avoid, somebody is going to win you over to buy something or to communicate with you, which is a bigger issue that we find with younger teenage kids, that who's talking to them, what are they saying to them.
Online grooming and all these kind of issues.
Exactly.
As well, right?
So the only way we're going to get away with this is to get to the core of it. Education, data and AI literacy.
Absolutely.
People understand that from work to home.
Absolutely. So I think the issue that is actually coming up here is clearly that it's not enough to have only internet penetration, internet accessibility, all this wider investments that we're seeing in the landscape for Malaysia. But at the same time, you need to have a population that is comfortable enough to take best advantage of what's online.
Yes. You change culture through tech. And we know that, right? You use tech, but if you acknowledge that if I do Facebook selling, and I understand the data and not just Facebook selling, then I optimize the usage of tech. So you change the culture. And we cannot put a break on this, right? We're talking about generative AI. Companies are trying to block it. People, this is an amazing technology. We need to figure out how to live with it instead of fight it.
Exactly. So from there, Shah, we move on into discussing what the industry predictions are for 2024, which of course state that AI is going to supercharge but social engineering attacks on an unprecedented scale. So we're also going to be looking forward to plenty of red herring days, as we call them, in the global ecosystem, all the way from you've got the American general elections, you've got the Paris Olympics, the UEFA Euro 2024 tournament. So what are the risks involved in when it comes to social engineering during these kind of really grand global scale events where everyone, including of course Malaysians, are not just part of the audience but are part of everything that goes on around them, which is things like, huge sales happening online, etc., to drive some of the traffic that is already captive towards that.
Yeah. That's what is incredible about this technology and AI. And I'm a huge fan. By now, I can't be lying. I'm a huge fan of this advancement that it gives, right? But like all great things, right? This is a race between evil and good. Okay, companies need
the duality
to
of life.
Yes, criminals will always find ways to steal, and that's essentially all situation, right? So companies are at war. So what happens is you need to prepare. And I think I kind of liked it that Malaysia spent the last 3 months last year creating this awareness of data privacy and protection.
Correct.
And I think more of that needs to be done. Organizations need to enable at the working level. It's no more top-down, yeah? It's no more, CEOs have been there for the longest and they struggle with this new change. And centralizing this kind of information is not enough. So when you decentralize and you allow people who have the domain expert to be able to counter, so you can actually prevent things, then, you do intervention, you react to things. And you have people with domain expert, nimble and agile to be able to fight this.
So domain experts, once again, that's going back into needing specialists in-house, perhaps, especially for bigger organizations. Yeah, so we've seen a lot of bank scams, for example, or financial scams, even job scams that Malaysians have unfortunately fallen prey to. And this actually cuts across age demographics, which is quite interesting. You have those perhaps on the younger side, employment side, meaning anyone between 20 to 50 falling prey to job scams. Then you also have the financial scams. Plenty of our elderly, unfortunately, have even been swindled completely out of their savings. So what can organizations, particularly in the financial sector, maybe do, Shah, to be able to then look back and then use AI in turn to be able to help improve the defenses that we have?
So we ranked 5th or 8th in the world,
actually,
right?
Yes.
Exactly.
For breachability.
Yes, and I read the report.
Not a list you want to be on.
I know, right? So the biggest breach is the government data, and then telco is the leak that we have, hence all these phone calls that we're getting. And financial sectors have been really advanced to look at fraudulence activities, and they've been really good at trying to be more proactive. But end of the day, it's educating the people not to fall for this.
Exactly.
Right? So we can put every mechanism, like I say, criminals always find ways to steal.
And we should anticipate that as a given.
Yes, and I think we should be more transparent in communicating if there's a breach that happened. I mean, if it's happened, it's happened.
And have an SOP, right?
Yes.
Do we have you seen, for example, in all the various data breaches we've seen, let's just look at the previous calendar year, was there anyone that stood out to you for having a good SOP that yourself as an expert would, approve of?
Not really. I think there's people still react.
Okay.
That's the thing. Prevention, you know, we react to things that we didn't anticipate. Although we know that's going to happen, when it happens, we are all surprised, right? And I do know one bank came close in setting up call centers to be able to, and then again,
I remember that.
Yeah,
Yes.
but when they call you, you're thinking it's spam, right? It's phishing.
Of course.
I don't take calls from 03, even if it's from a local bank, right?
True.
So that kind of hurts a lot of people. But having put out there and acknowledging that you've been, this has been happening, allows customers to call you back to check if their account is safe. And to have that, it's painful, right? We all have this Asian thing that we want to hide, you know, under the earth and hope that it goes away. And it doesn't.
And it doesn't, absolutely. So on that note, though, we take a quick break. We'll be back right after with the rest of the interview with Sharala Axter. Don't go anywhere.
Asia tumpuan utama dunia. Dengan ekonomi yang semakin rancak, pembangunan lestari dan tenaga boleh diperbaharui, apakah pula impak kecerdasan buatan AI dalam perkembangan teknologi dan masa depan pekerjaan? Kami mendalami setiap berita dan cerita. Saksikan diskusi, dialog dan laporan khas di Agenda Awani Asia bersama koresponden khas kami setiap Sabtu 9 malam di semua platform Astro Awani.
Tuan benci kriket, cikgu yang paksa kita main.
Saya juga pengen menang. Kau semua tak payah haduh dalam tim kriket saya lagi. I ask you for an average team, not a trash like this.
Semua yang Abah korban untuk budak-budak kriket ni, kau baloi kau bah.
Tapi kalau saya berhenti, 15 menit, dia akan terkilat.
Kemencik Balls. Sewa dan stream on demand atau sila ke saluran 480.
Tekanan boleh mematahkan anda, tetapi ia juga memberi semangat dan mengangkat impian kita. Malaysia ke Piala Asia! Keberanian adalah anugerah dalam menghadapi tekanan dan kita akan buktikannya. Piala Asia Qatar 2023 ke semua 51 perlawanan secara langsung di Astro.
Kerajaan melaksanakan audit subsidi minyak masak selepas ia dijangka meningkat 4 kali ganda menjelang hujung tahun depan.
Angkatan Pertahanan Awam Malaysia APM memilih Sabah sebagai kanvas kajian bagi meremajakan semula organisasi itu.
Sarawak telah menerima kehadiran 3.18 juta pengunjung ke negeri itu, melepasi lebih awal sasaran untuk tahun 2023.
Sabah dan Sarawak mempunyai potensi besar sebagai pelengkap pusat ekonomi di Semenanjung.
Welcome back to Niaga Spotlight. Still with me, Tehmina, Kaoosji. And today, of course, we are on a forecast episode looking at Malaysia's big data industry in 2024. And I'm, of course, continuing the conversation with Sharala Axter in the studios. So, Shah, going a little bit deeper into the fact that we're going to see a lot of AI supercharging the social engineering in Malaysia, especially. So we're going to be seeing some spikes around key dates. Now, Malaysians, we love to shop. And of course, there are always not just annual sales, but sales that happen around festive seasons, of which we've got plenty as well. We're just done with New Year. We're looking forward to Chinese New Year. And of course, after that, Ramadan and Hari Raya. So what are some...
planning your shopping?
Oh, I think I might be. But to come into it with a big data point, how can people actually, while we're going about our business online in that sense, also stay on the lookout for what might actually be data breaches or even some little red flags that maybe go unnoticed for the average online shopper?
I think it's improved tremendously. We were just talking about it, like I can't use my Touch and Go without validating 100 times about my ID or my passport, right?
Or the figure or the amount.
Yeah, so I feel we've taken it to the next level, that it's not so easy now to go in and just use up your credit to buy something. You know, it has to go to the bank and you wait SMS and before you do it. And I think as inconvenient as it is now, I think that's a huge, what you call a huge take up on how important this is to have, you know, security in the money that you're going to spend.
Sure.
And I think the older e-commerce, the more matured e-commerce has put in a lot of, the Lazadas and the Shopees that you can even insure your delivery, right? Because the whole point we go into this trusted platform is you trust that they would validate the sellers, okay? And then you have some popular ones that you don't know the sellers who come into the platform for different reasons.
Fair.
And you need to know those kind of, what do you call, sellers out there, what kind of platform you go into. I think the red flags that we tend to look at is, I think more so not about the money that you spend, it's about the quality of things that you get on that. Buying medication over...
Fair enough, verifying that these are actually legitimate.
Yes, and a lot of us go like, oh, it's cheaper than me going to the pharmacy. But, the trust on internet has gone, journalism, trust in journalism, you do check, you do fact checks. And anything, yes. I'm a big fan of journalism ever since, AI and generative AI comes. There's nobody to validate this. I think those are the things that, you need to watch out. Kids using this online purchasing is a big thing. Like my daughter keeps asking, why can't I have my own account? And I'm going like, no, you tell me, I buy. Right. And it used to be with iPhones, right? Where kids, you put your credit card and kids will be using your phone, and before you know it, your bill for the games have gone thousands of ringgit, but which now all these matured platforms have put in
safeguards
in it, but chatting with people, asking to give information, I think that has to be a big no-no, and we know that Malaysia is high on that. People making calls, you won the lottery, emails,
correct.
And
I think we all know someone, maybe even 1 degree separated, who's been a victim of such scams.
And we need to talk about it. It's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, don't stop talking about it. Right. So, still talking about it though, let's dive into Malaysia's cybersecurity gaps, Shah. What do you think can be done immediately as we're fast accelerating towards not just 2025 but also 2030, whereby which, of course, the transaction volume, etc., all of that is just going to exponentially increase. What does Malaysia need to do to be able to keep up? Ensure, hopefully, we're not going to have quite as many data breaches. We've, of course, just had the launch of PADU, the government database, integrating all of that.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a controversial conversation when I talk about going cloud or having server in premises, right? A lot of these, organizations feel safer in having their servers in their premises, and I think that would be one of the major reasons for security breach, because the way cloud works, and we have this PDPA where you cannot put personal data outside the country, and all that is important, but the way the cloud works is it basically my name would be in server in Canada, my address would be in a server in India, and another, so it's so segregated as one individual information that makes it harder, right, to just hack and get all the information you need. And that becomes an issue with a lot of banks not wanting to go clouds because of the uncertainty of the technology, and rather have something in the back door that you can look at it and watch it.
Right.
I think that's not helping, and I think people need to embrace technology, go cloud. Cybersecurity talent is a big issue in this part of the world, so we get a lot of foreigners to do that, and I think that's important to nurture that. Having said that, cybersecurity law, right? We don't have enough legal firms out here that specializes in that, and I think all that we need to create an ecosystem, a healthy ecosystem that helps monitor. And I hate when I say things like we are always reacting. Right, we need to start putting. We like do first, then we figure it out.
Sure. But or it happens, the snafu is done, and then we reflect.
And then we're on the other side where we are too cautious, too careful to do this. And I think our central bank says you can do whatever with the data, provided that if there's a breach, you're answerable. Then people are like, that's how innovation works, right? Like, oh, I'm not going to touch this because this is people's data, and I'm
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So to end the conversation, Shah, what would be top of your wish list when it comes to big data analytics and the entire big data industry for 2024 in Malaysia?
So we forget in this whole technology, human are the center of this. We are the maestro, we are the conductor of the orchestra, right? If you think about flying a plane, you don't put it in autopilot without a pilot. You don't do a pilot without a co-pilot. So if something goes wrong, the most experienced person in the cockpit is the one who's going to decide whether or help us from, saving the plane and lives, right? So I think we have to understand the human factor is the one that is going to man this, who's going to make it better than evil. And we should embrace it, because I think this is going to change the way we live. It's going to change the education of our kids.
Sure.
It's going to change the business we're in, and it's going to make it, better and efficient. So if we are the center of it, we need to own it.
And take charge now.
Take charge. So it's not about policing. We love policies and policing, and it's not about regulatory. It's all about, being the center of the whole technology is the human that we should not forget.
Exactly. And of course, not forgetting the fact that, yes, 76 billion ringgit in investments, but let's make sure at least 50% of the economic opportunities that stem from that actually go into the Malaysian workforce, right?
Yes. Yes. My vision for the country is to become the innovative hub. When you prepare the talent to create and innovate, then we are better than just doing manufacturing jobs.
There you go. Sharala, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Thank you, Tam.
Well, that's all we have time for today on Niaga Spotlight. I'm Tehmina Kaoosji signing off. Of course, join us next Friday for more business analysis and insights. Here's to a productive week ahead.
Perkembangan